Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro revenge story. This story takes place from 2016 to 2023. I studied film and media production in college. I worked on various TV shows, movies, and documentaries, becoming so skilled that I eventually started my own video production company. But you need to understand that the initial costs in this industry can be astronomical when you're just getting started. You can't do the work unless you have the equipment, so at minimum, you need to shell out around 50K on gear before even opening your doors. And so during the first couple of years when my company was still in the red and paying off the cost of that equipment, I decided I would take on a side job that could provide a consistent livable income. With my previous experience in video production and expertise with various types of equipment, it was just the edge I needed to land a position at a high-end luxury hotel in my city. By high-end, I mean it was the luxury hotel, one of the oldest and most prestigious non-chain hotels in the entire region. Let's call them Grand Lux Hotel. It was 2016, and I was just starting out as their brand new audio-visual technician. As an AV tech, I literally made all events at the hotel happen. A few hours before your event, I would be the one in the ballroom setting up everything. The lights, sound system, projectors, screens, and even some stage elements. I was the difference between your event looking impressive or your event happening in a bare-bones room. If your event called for it, I would also be the one operating the tech table in the back of the room. This is one area where my previous experience in the production studio came in handy. I was already used to the high-paced nature of running a live event, so I was right in my element. After the event, I would then have to strike the room and get it ready for the next one. I was really good at my job. Very good. So good, in fact, that within 6 months of being hired, I became their lead technician. Meaning it was my call to make sure every event was set up and ready on time. I managed a team of 3 other techs and made sure every event was ready to go. I can honestly say that I've never missed a deadline on an event, even when turnaround times in a ballroom were measured in minutes rather than hours. I learned in the production industry that when an event starts at a scheduled time, no matter what, the show must go on. So I always figured out a way to make it happen. A little background on how Grand Lux Hotel operated. I had several layers of bosses above me. Immediately above me there was the director and the event coordinator. The event coordinator handled the months of planning, contracts, and billing of clients, and the director was the linchpin that connected all the activities of the hotel to all the activities of the AV department. Together we were just one branch of a larger AV company that we'll call Apex AV. Apex AV is a nationwide company that has locations in hundreds of hotels across the country. My branch of Apex AV worked for Grand Lux Hotel. Along with having the event guests at the hotel as clients, the hotel itself was also considered a client. Apex AV was under a contract that granted us residency at the hotel. Grand Lux Hotel would throw all AV business our way in return for a percentage of the profit, as well as providing all hotel AV needs for a reduced cost. Hotel events could be as simple as a projector and screen for a weekly staff meeting, or could be as complex as a huge corporate event for the parent company. The hotel is owned by a massive corporation, we'll call them Titan Hospitality Group, or THG for short, that owns several upscale luxury hotels all over the country. But the headquarters for THG was only a few blocks away from Grand Lux Hotel. So Grand Lux was the flagship hotel for the entire corporation. The hotel that THG would hold all its major events at. The hotel that was always under the microscope and held to the highest standards. Over the years of working side by side with THG, I made some pretty big connections. Since I was an AV tech with a video production company, I was able to negotiate that into a very profitable situation in which I started to handle the corporation's video production work when needed in connection to a hotel event. Whenever they had a presentation to give that required more than a simple PowerPoint, I made the video. So needless to say, I became very well known among the staff at Grand Lux Hotel and the staff at THG. I was also well known among the event staff and executives I worked with at the hotel. I had event planners, executives, politicians, and CEOs that remembered my name because I was that guy that made their large events happen. They trusted me. I was sometimes the only outsider present in a room where confidential meetings were taking place. And I was even vetted by the Secret Service, so that I was the only AV tech in the city with the security clearance to be in the same room as the president. Those years with Apex AV were some of the best years of my professional career. and I received constant praise and recognition from clients, the hotel, and THG. But all things must come to an end, and in 2021, Apex AV's contract was up. THG had the choice to either renew the contract or go with a different AV company. Enter Zenith AV. Over the last year and a half, they've been growing and moving into our territory. It was no secret that a couple of Zenith AV's executives had the ear of some of the THG executives, so it was no surprise when the decision was made that in order to cut costs, Apex AV was underbid, and Zenith AV would become the next resident of the hotel. Did I mention this was a national deal? For the last 5 years, Apex AV had been the AV company at every hotel of THG nationwide, and now every location was switching to Zenith AV. When it came to our hotel, the flagship hotel, there was a stipulation entered into the contract. I had to come with the deal. I knew the clients, and the clients knew me. They trusted me. They knew the work I produced was quality, and it would ease the transition considerably. So there I was, traded like an asset in a multi-million-dollar deal. On one 20-hour day in May of 2021, I moved Apex AV out of the hotel, clocked out for the last time, and immediately clocked in with my new position as the lead AV tech for Zenith AV, and moved all their equipment in. Considerably less and cheaper equipment. The transition started out rocky, to say the least. The clients trusted me and the hotel trusted me, but I could tell my new company still saw me as a member of a rival AV company. An extra person that they were required to hire. The contradiction started almost immediately. I've been running the storage rooms for 5 years, and I know where to store the equipment in the most efficient manner possible, I said to the new director. We'll be doing things our way, he replied curtly, making it clear my input wasn't wanted. Over the next 2 months, they quickly learned that I was correct, and the equipment made its way into the proper spots. The AV office also went through some changes as it became off limits for U.S. technicians. It was to be an office for the director, the event coordinator, and for clients. There was to be no reason for us technicians to have to cross paths with the clients. In the 5 years with Apex AV and my time at Zenith AV, never had a client actually set foot in the AV office. We always came to them, they never came to us. So all this new policy did was take away my desk and anywhere else for my technicians to sit in our downtime between events. Those were just changes that screwed with us technicians. Over the next year, the changes this new AV company made started to affect the clients. A pattern started to emerge which the clients began to pick up on. Clients who had the same event at the hotel year after year for decades suddenly noticed a steep rise in the cost of everything. And then when the clients arrived and took a look at the ballroom, it was nowhere near as impressive as in previous years. In short, we were overcharging and under-delivering. I would try to slip our clients some of the equipment I knew they needed, but the new event coordinator put a stop to it whenever he caught me. If they didn't pay for it, they don't get it, he would say sternly. A whole year of this occurred with clients getting bare-bones setups for what they paid for. My reputation held for a little bit, but clients soon realized my hands were tied, and I wasn't allowed to give them the exceptional level of service they expected from me. Sales started to slow down, and events started to use outside AV companies more often. After a year of this steady decline, there was a shakeup in the hotel. The AV director took this decline as a sign that it was time for him to retire, and the event coordinator moved on to another position. When they left, a new director transferred in from another hotel. He's taking on both positions as both the director and event coordinator. The previous duo may have been bad at the job, but this new guy made them look good by comparison. How do you fix charging too much? By charging even more. How do you talk to your clients? You talk down to them and make sure they know that you know more than they do. Listen, ma'am, I've been doing this for years. I know what I'm talking about, he would say condescendingly to experienced event planners who had been in the business longer than he had. I literally had to take an active role in pushing him out of events when he would start to openly argue with clients. I may not have had official authority over him, but at points when he took things too far with clients, I was not above treating him like a child and banishing him to his office. Over the years, I had built up my reputation in the city as the AV tech that everyone wanted to work with, and this guy could undo all my hard work and destroy my reputation in a single interaction. When this new director took over, the writing was on the wall. Zenith AV was a sinking ship, and the captain of the flagship hotel was drunk with power and actively aiming for the iceberg. I was still friends with many of the executives at THG, so I still had a sentimental connection to try to stick with the hotel and rescue it from the downward spiral. I had to figure out a way to retain the clients. But that's very difficult to do with the way the new director was crippling our reputation. Zenith AV was corrupt all the way to the top with policies that valued money and power over giving our clients what they needed for their events. At our lowest point, we had staple events that were held consistently at our hotel for decades, suddenly switching to other hotels. Do you have any idea how much attention it attracts in a billion-dollar corporation when your AV company is responsible for losing the hotel millions of dollars in events? The decline was getting bad, and the final straw came when the decline affected our hours. We 4 technicians were lucky to get 10 hours of work a week. Clients at the hotel just weren't going with us anymore, and so there were not enough hours to go around. An AV tech doesn't work at a normal set time. They work only when there's an event to work, so if there is no work, then there are no hours. If there are no hours, then there is no pay. And as an AV technician, you need to be ready to go whenever an event was scheduled, so having a supplementary part-time job to fill in the gaps was impossible. We had it. I started to orchestrate a little operation in our massive amount of free time. We all started looking for new jobs, and by us all, I don't just mean the 4 technicians at Grand Lux Hotel. A similar decline was happening at all the other Zenith AV hotels in our area, so I convinced every technician in the area to start job searching if they weren't already doing so. As luck would have it, our job searches were all receiving some very promising results at roughly the same time. So a synchronized event was possible. Now, nothing can be proven I had anything to do with it, but a friend of mine at Apex AV, my old director who was now promoted into an executive position, may or may not have been given a sufficient heads up on what was about to happen. A hint or two may have also made its way somehow to a couple of friends I still had at THG. THG was really getting pissed off at Zenith AV, but they were locked into the same 5-year contract and had no choice but to endure the decline until the contract was up, unless something significant happened to break that contract. Suddenly, within the same week, every AV tech in the region put in their 2-week notice at the same time. This happened, seemingly coordinated right before a large event at Grand Lux Hotel for THG. As I said before, Grand Lux Hotel was the flagship hotel where THG held all their corporate events, and now the only one left to set up and run their largest event was the lone incompetent Zenith AV director. This problem created a massive ripple effect through Zenith AV. The biggest yearly event for their biggest client at the flagship hotel was in jeopardy, and they did not have the manpower to deliver what they promised. They were in breach of the contract. But luckily, Apex AV somehow heard about all these problems coming up and was able to swoop in and provide the most impressive AV setup THG ever had at their event. "We really appreciate you stepping in on such short notice," one of the THG executives said to my old director. "Zenith AV has been a complete disaster. This series of events really impacted Zenith AV's worth as a company, and Apex AV was glad to step in and make Zenith AV an offer." Apex AV ended up absorbing Zenith AV. All equipment and personnel became part of Apex AV. Apex AV also absorbed the existing contract, which THG was happy to allow them to do. Apex AV moved back into every THG hotel nationwide. Events returned to the hotel upon hearing this news, and the reputation was restored. My plan went exactly as well as I hoped it would. The mass quitting I organized was the final nail in the coffin to take down a multi-million-dollar AV company. Apex AV was able to expand back to the size they were before and is still at all of THG's hotels to this day. THG was hemorrhaging money due to Zenith AV, and they were quite relieved to be rid of them. Unfortunately, the story never really had a happy ending for me. As I mentioned, I held on to the position for far too long. I should have gotten out 2 years earlier than I did, and in those 2 years of minimal hours for minimal pay, I ended up in a financial black hole that I just finished digging myself out of last year. My car was repossessed, my condo was foreclosed, and my business was forced to close its doors, as I had to sell all my equipment just to get by. From that point on, I was forced to give up on following my dreams and instead follow the money instead. To get positions that paid big rather than positions that allowed me to do the kind of work I love to do. Zenith AV took everything from me, but I can proudly say that I was the one tech responsible for taking out an entire company. The next one is an entitled people story. I've lived in my cozy little house near the river for over 20 years now. It's always been such a peaceful place, with the gentle gurgling of the water and the chirping birds. My property extends right up to the riverbank, so I've got quick access to enjoy nature walks along the water. A few months ago, a new neighbor moved into the vacant house next door. I was delighted to finally have a neighbor again after that house sat empty for nearly a year. I envisioned backyard barbecues and borrowing cups of sugar from each other. Oh, how wrong I was. The new neighbor, who I'll call John, didn't seem interested in getting to know me at all. In fact, he barely even acknowledged me the few times I tried to introduce myself. I chalked it up to him just being shy or busy getting settled in. But his behavior toward me and my property was far worse than just keeping to himself. The problem started about 3 weeks after John moved in. I awoke one morning to discover large patches of my backyard had become flooded with water overnight. There was a noticeable flow coming from John's yard into mine. I quickly went over and knocked on his door to ask if he knew what had caused the flooding. John answered the door reeking of alcohol. He slurred his words as he explained he had dug a big trench along the property line and redirected some of the river water into it. According to him, this would boost the value of both our properties by having riverfront access. I was flabbergasted by his audacity to flood my land without permission. I told John he needed to immediately redirect the water back into the river and fix the giant trench he had carved into my property. John just shrugged and said he would think about it, then slammed the door in my face. Over the next several days, I kept going back and demanding John fix the mess he had created. No matter how much I pleaded or tried reasoning with him, he refused to do anything. The constant standing water quickly destroyed the grass and plants in my yard. It also attracted a swarm of mosquitoes that made it impossible to spend any time outside. Eventually, I realized I would need to get authorities involved. I contacted my home insurance company and explained the situation in detail. They sent an adjuster to assess the damage and provide documentation for my claim. Next, I hired a lawyer to help me take legal action. We filed a lawsuit against John for recklessly damaging my property without permission and refusing to undo the flooding he caused. It was incredibly frustrating having to go through months of legal proceedings just to get compensation for damage that John stubbornly refused to fix. When we finally had our day in court, I presented overwhelming evidence against him through photos, insurance assessments, and witness testimony. John made a pathetic attempt to defend himself, but nothing could excuse the purposeful flooding of my land. The judge ended up ruling fully in my favor, ordering John to pay for all repairs to restore my property to its original state. Justice was served at last. The court order forced John to hire a contractor to come redo my backyard. They re-leveled the land, removed the trench, replanted grass and trees, and ensured proper drainage back into the river. Watching the stunning transformation occur over several weeks gave me an overwhelming sense of relief. I could finally look out my window and see a lush, vibrant yard instead of a swampy mess. It was so gratifying knowing my property was back to normal thanks to the court's intervention. John learned the hard way that reckless actions have serious consequences. I hope he thinks twice before ever attempting to take advantage of a neighbor like that again. As for me, I now cherish my backyard paradise more than ever. The sounds of the river feel soothing once again now that this disastrous chapter has ended. My advice after going through this nightmare ordeal is to never tolerate a neighbor damaging your property. Stand up for your rights because the law and justice are on your side. With persistence and patience, you can hold wrongdoers accountable. There's no better feeling than seeing a court-ordered repair crew wiping away the mess caused by a disrespectful neighbor. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Story from my grandfather's time in the RAAF. He was a heavy mechanic, transport officer, worked around a lot of heavy machinery, and did maintenance on runways. He was assigned to a base on a Pacific island somewhere, and he was working on a bulldozer in one of their maintenance sheds. An uppity just out of Duntroon lieutenant walked up to him and demanded that he level a field with the bulldozer as they were preparing for an exercise. He told him to level that field and level every goddamn thing on that field. My grandfather replied that he wasn't trained in the use of the bulldozer. He was just repairing a part on it. The lieutenant snapped back and said, "A commanding officer just gave you an order. Now get in that bulldozer and level that field." "Pop, though, duck it. What's the worst that could happen?" And he jumped up in that dozer and started leveling the field. Here's where it got malicious. In the area of the field there was a brand new jail that had been constructed. It was a temporary wooden building for use while the Air Force waited for supplies to build a more sturdy concrete building. The construction had only been recently completed and nothing had been moved into the building yet. Anyway, during his journey to flatten the field for the lieutenant's exercise, my pop accidentally clipped the wall of the jail and caused it to begin collapsing. At this point, he knew he was ducked. He was going to be in trouble no matter what he did. So he thought, well, duck it. The lieutenant told me to flatten the field and every goddamn thing on the field. Pop just ended up bulldozing the entire jail and flattening it out along with the rest of the field. He ended up being court-martialed for destroying RAAF property. He represented himself and only asked that he question the lieutenant that asked him to do the work on the field. Lieutenant, did you ask me to level the field with a bulldozer? Yes, but I didn't tell you to level the jail as well. But you did instruct me to use the bulldozer to level the field. Yes, I did. Lieutenant, did I warn you that I wasn't instructed on the use of the bulldozer? Yes, but... Lieutenant, did you tell me to level everything on that field? Yes, but... Lieutenant, is the jailhouse on the field that you instructed me? Someone not trained in the use of a bulldozer to level? Yes, Corporal. The jailhouse is on that field. The only trouble my pop got into with this one was the adjudicator of the case told my pop to listen far more carefully to the orders of a superior officer. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.